Lovely. Welcome to tonight's Audit and Standards Committee. Before we get into the agenda, I've been informed of the sad news of the passing of Stan Newins, who is the former MP for Harlow and Epping at the time, I believe, or was it just Harlow on its own? But the constituency had Harlow in it
as well at one time.
So we're going to have a minute silence to start off the meeting, and then we'll get underway. So I think we'll start now. Lovely. Thank you very much, everyone. Apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, I have some.
Lovely, Russell. Councillor Perrin, sorry.
I have some for Mike Hardware, Councillor Mike Hardware, and for Councillor Simon Carter.
Very much, Councillor Perrin. And for us, it's Councillor Shannon Jezard, I believe. Lovely. Declarations of interest. Minutes from the previous meeting on pages 2 to 5. Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes?
Great.
Any corrections or alterations?
Yeah, I have a. Can you hear me, Chair? Sorry. Yeah, I have a couple of questions on item 34 in the minutes, if that's okay.
Do you want to bring them under matters arising?
Sorry, I thought that's where you'd moved to. Beg your pardon.
Are they a fair and accurate record?
Yes.
Agreed. Lovely. Matters arising, Councillor Perrin.
Yeah. So under item 34 in those minutes, I'm just bringing them up on my screen now. So the 2018-19 accounts, they were, if the second recommendation B, the committee delegated the approval of those accounts, should the latest accounts need amendment, following the completion of audit work to the Deputy, to the Chief Executive and the Head of Finance and Property Services in consultation with the Chair of the Audit and Standards Committee. So have these been approved yet? If they have, where was that reported? If they haven't, why not? And I've got just two more after that, Chair, if that's okay.
Councillor Perrin, it's almost as if we knew these questions were going to come up, and we've
I'm
invited
glad.
Steve Bladden along from the auditors to give you an update on the current state of the 18-19 accounts, and I'm sure Simon Freeman can answer some of the questions as well, but I'll hand over to Steve first.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Perrin. So we haven't yet issued our opinion on the 2018-19 statement of accounts. There are still two issues that we are working to resolve with officers. So the first of those was around the council's group accounts and the working papers provided to support those, specifically around whether we could see the gross income and gross expenditure going into those statement of accounts. We have now managed to resolve that issue, so we have no further issues left on that particular matter that we reported to you back in November. There is, however, one area which is still outstanding, which is the disclosure of a pensions reserve that relates to the subsidiary of the council, HTS. So we have shared our technical advice with officers around the disclosure of that pensions reserve. officers have responded on that, but we are still going through a process where we are reviewing the council's response to our technical advice. So until we conclude that, we're not in a position to issue an opinion yet on the 18-19 statement of accounts.
Thank you very much. And again, Chair, I have two further questions, but that question's been answered to my satisfaction.
Absolutely, you can have two further questions. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. So when may we expect the 1920 accounts to come before the committee? And has there been any dispensation by the government to delay the signing off of said accounts? There's my two questions rolled into one there.
Very kind of you to think so considerately of time. I'm probably going to pass back to Steve, or if Simon wants to come in there, but I'll go Steve first and then bring in Simon if he wants to.
So there is, the government isn't required to give a dispensation to delay the sign off of the audit of accounts for 1920. We do report our progress regularly to Public Sector Audit Appointments Limited, who kind of monitor the sign off of accounts, but there isn't any dispensation required as such from government to do so. It might just be worth reflecting that despite us not having signed off 18-19, we have managed to make a reasonable amount of progress on 19-20. So we've completed all of the detail, or the vast majority of the detailed planning work that we need to do. We have also issued the council with samples for income, expenditure, fixed asset additions and disposals. And I think what that reflects is a lot of the groundwork that has been done in auditing the 18-19 set of accounts and the improvements that the council's has made. I'll probably let Simon answer the question on when you can expect a set of accounts to come before you, but I think it's fair to say that we're unlikely to complete our audit of those accounts until July or August of this year.
Thank you.
Simon, would you like to come in?
Yeah, correct me, thank you, Chair. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but my understanding is that under normal practice, prior to the COVID issue arising across the country, we would normally have expected to close our accounts by the 31st of May and to have, under the previous arrangements, then completed the audit work by the end of July in each year. My understanding for 1920 is that we will be expected to have an audit completed by the end of September for the 1920 accounts. So if we're going to bring the accounts to the committee for approval, that's likely to be at the earliest the November committee.
Perrin, any further questions?
Not at this time, thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Any other questions from any other councillors? Steve, you are free to go because I don't think there's other agenda items that pertain to you, or you're more than welcome to stay and listen to the rest of my Audit and Standards Committee meeting, but the option is absolutely yours.
I will stay, Stefan, and listen to the other items. Fine. Thank you.
Okay, we're on to agenda item 5, which is written questions and petitions. Hannah? There are none, right? Not move anything into non-contentious business. So, internal audit strategy and plan 21 to 22. Where did last year disappear to? I'll hand over to Sarah Marsh.
You're quite right there. Okay. So I'm going to run through the papers and draw your attention to various points. If I'm going too fast, just let me know and I'll slow down a bit. So starting with my covering report, this is my strategy for the coming year. And we go to item 3, the purpose of that. So the reason why we have the strategy is to provide you with that independent and objective assurance that you need. Making sure that we link that with the key risks of the council, giving you assurances there, adding value and supporting the work of officers, and making sure value for money is being achieved, and making sure at all times we're adhering to the standards. We move on down the report. to section 8, so the key deliverables. So these haven't changed from previous years then. So the internal audit section is going to deliver the plan, which hopefully you're going to approve, or let me know if you need any changes. We're making sure there is an integrated approach to these assurances that we're giving. So we're looking at other sources of assurance, consultants' reports or other functions and things like that, making sure we get that management commitment to the recommendations we make, because it's no good making recommendations if nothing happens, and you see that through the tracker process. And we'll always continually developing our approach, looking at innovative ways, more efficient ways of delivering our service. So I continue down and I take you to item 15. So it's talking about the quality assurance and the performance management. So under the public sector internal audit standards, I have to be audited myself every 5 years by an independent person. And we're coming up for our 5 years. So I'm just currently getting some quotes, and we'll be bringing that to the audit committee about the approach for that. If you remember, back in 2016, we got a clean bill of health, and I was really pleased about that. And also the plan that we've developed, it's important that we have that flexibility. As we found out last year with COVID-19, I had an audit plan, we had to change it rather rapidly. We had to focus on work that was important to the council at that particular time, supporting them, especially in the early days, and then having a change in the audit plan so that we could deliver, that was something that was meaningful. So we've still built in that flexibility into our audit plan. Section 21 talks about the key priority areas. No, 2024. It talks about the priority areas. These haven't really changed from last year. So we're again helping move forward the risk management framework. There's a lot of focus on information governance and information governance and supporting the officer group on that to help move that forward with the council. Fraud is always a keen area. We're always looking out for that and making sure that controls that we put in place do try and prevent fraud, as well as taking investigations where necessary. Looking always for value for money, so we're always benchmarking Harlow against our other people in the partnership, so it's Epping and Broxbourne, as well as looking wider. We're looking there to make sure that services are actually considering that as part of their processes. And then they're supporting you in your job as audit committee members. And then under 25, a more operational level, we're still going to focus on HCS being a significant partnership, delivering a lot of our services for us. And the key financial systems always remains core in our work. And this year we are focusing quite heavily on project management to make sure that that is moving forward and we have a robust framework. So then Appendix A actually sets out the 3-year plan. It follows a similar format that I've used previously. So it starts off with overarching themes and then moves on to cross-cutting audits and then on to the more operational audits. So we started off with, we start off with governance. So this year we're going to be concentrating on the HCS group governance arrangements, taking into account this time housing and regeneration. Because when we did the audit last time, that hadn't been created, so we'll be looking at that. So there's a number of audits that appear throughout the audit plan, and they are just one audit on their own, and not lots of different audits, but it's the way that I break up my plan. So there's things like the facilities management, so that comes under sort of value for money, and also it comes under the operational section as well. You'll see that we've got projects in the 3-year plan as well. So this year we'll be focusing, well, 21-22 we'll be focusing on lessons learned from the HR system, which has gone live this year, and also looking at council house building, because that's a significant project, long term, a lot of money involved. And then throughout the plan, as well as doing our audits, we're facilitating the council, helping them move forward. So I talked about information governance, where they have an action plan and we do a lot of work there to support that. And also we're helping to facilitate discussions around service and business planning and making sure that's linked to risk management. The last appendix is Appendix B. This is to ensure that we actually have enough sufficient work that covers the key risks of the council. It's done on what's called the 3 lines of defence model. So when you look at it, you can see that we have 3 lines of defence to make sure things don't go wrong. So the first line of defence is what we sort of the operational controls, or what we call the doers. So that's following processes, people being trained, management oversight and things like that. The second line of defence is what we call the helpers. So that's where the management gets their assurances. So it's management information that they use, reception reports, and the committee structure as well. So hopefully if anything's going to go wrong, it gets picked up with the first line of defence. The second line of defence will hopefully pick up anything that gets through that line. And then your last line of defence is what we call the checkers, and that's where you get your independent people in. So you've got your external auditors giving you that checking, as well as a large amount coming from internal audit. And happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll go to Councillor Eddie Johnson first.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions actually on internal audit. Page 10, Table 1, Service Performance Targets for 2021-22, Continuous Professional Development. How is this monitored?
So we have a central spreadsheet, and each member of the team puts what they've done there. So it's not always going on a training course or things like that. Sometimes they give them little projects to do. They have to do a sort of a policy review, then that gets put down on there. Sometimes I'll pull them into a meeting. They might come and watch an audit committee meeting, or they might attend a corporate governance group meeting, and then that gets put down, as well as wider reading and as part of their work.
Okay, thank you. And the other question is page 12, Priority Areas for 2021. And it's D, value for money. I won't read it, but I think you'll know which paragraph it is. It includes Epping Forest and Broxbourne. And can you give me examples of challenges for value for money and whether they were accepted?
So we did an audit of fire risk assessments at Epping Forest. And we didn't think that their framework was as tight as it could be. So the auditor who was doing that, we came and talked to Harlow because we knew that they had a much better process. And we could then go back to Epping and suggest how they could improve it, because we could see it working in practice. As an example of sort of the joint working value for money aspect.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Clark, then Councillor Holcoop.
Yes, I was looking at the fraud section, priority areas, on page 12. Well, there's a word missing actually, but it got me thinking, because I thought, is this a strategy that's going across the three areas, the 3 authorities, or is it throughout the council? And then I thought, as working across the 3 authorities is very successful, and I was impressed by that later on, I wondered why, if it isn't working across the 3 authorities, why it's not possible to work cross-cutting in that respect as well.
Is that with respect to fraud specifically?
Yes, I looked at that particularly simply because there was a word left out, but don't worry about it, because it made me think actually.
So I'm not quite sure what point you're getting at, but so we do fraud 3 different ways in each of the different councils. So at Broxbourne, we part of the shared anti-fraud service. At Epping, I manage the corporate fraud team, and then at Harlow, I help facilitate the corporate fraud group that we have. And again, it's sharing that good practice. So we've been doing a lot of work on grants across all 3 councils and trying to work out the best way to help each of the councils, and we've been able to pull that across. And the corporate fraud manager at Epping has been to Harlow, to especially when we got our housing tenancy fraud officer, helping them to embed their procedures, and he's been giving ad hoc advice as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Holcoop.
Thank you, Chair. On the Appendix A, page 22 and page 23, under the 2023-24 on page 22, you've got the voids last audit 2013-14 and allocations 2014-15. It's not going to be done again until 23-24? For clarification on that one?
So each year we have a chat with all the heads of service, and we have a chat with the key 3rd-tier managers, and we send out questionnaires, and we get everyone's view on what we should be looking at. We compare that to the risk register. I see what's happening in the external environment. I see what my peers are also auditing as well. So when we were discussing this particular area with housing, they didn't have any particular concerns at this particular time. They were looking at, they knew what their issues were, and they were already working through them. As you're aware, we have limited resources, and it's important that we focus on the key risks to the council, and it was decided that it wasn't a high priority area, and it'd be better to focus our time on what was in for the plan for next year.
Okay, so on page 23 under licensing, same year, same, they were done in 16-17. Would that be the same situation with them, with clarification?
Yeah, definitely.
And therefore they're going to be pushed back.
Yeah, and if you remember when I was talking about the 3 lines of defence, so with licensing, we have a licensing committee, and it's very much driven by the government as well. There isn't a sort of a free hand that they can have, and I already know that through discussions, the sort of checks that they put in place, say perhaps for their taxi licenses and things. So again, it's very much done on a risk basis.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions? So I've got one quick question. The people who audit you, do they have auditors? And the people who audit them, do they have auditors? And is there just like one person at the top who audits all the auditors?
Pack it in, Chair. Come on.
Any comments on the report? Then I will go to recommendations on pages 6. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Lovely. Thank you very much. We are on to period 11, internal audit activity report 2021, pages 30 to 49. I'll hand over to Sarah Marsh.
Thank you very much, Chair. So same process, I'm going to go through the report. So starting off with item 2, unfortunately there's 2 audits that we haven't been able to complete this year for a number of reasons, COVID-19 being a big one. So that's the housing benefits one, and it's the overview of housing health and safety, but I've already put them in the plan for next year, so they will definitely get done. We've issued 2 reports since our last update in November. So the first one is on fixed assets. So the audit did find some positives there. So we do have a fixed asset register, which is good. It's kept up to date. Things are depreciated in line with accounting rules, and there are check processes in place to make sure that our assets are still around, and we reconcile it to the general ledger at year end. What wasn't working quite so well, why we've had the moderate assurance, is because it's around the IT assets. So in parallel with the fixed asset register, there is a separate IT asset spreadsheet which gets fed into the fixed asset register, so we can make sure that that fixed asset register is correct, because that feeds into the accounts. The auditors couldn't find all the laptops that we've got. What happened pre-COVID, and it happened in 2019, is that IT on an annual basis goes around and checks that we do actually have all our equipment. I know that they go around and look at our PCs and they make sure that the laptops are still in use and things, but we were going for a rollout of laptops, and then COVID came along and that rollout accelerated largely. So the spreadsheet that they were using was, they use a different listing because they just needed to get the equipment out so quickly. If you remember, we went into lockdown on the 23rd with very little notice, and people needed to be able to work from home. So they need to, and they will have that done hopefully in the next month or so, is transfer all that information over into their different spreadsheets, get rid of the separate spreadsheet that they were using, and they will commence those annual checks. So be assured we will track them all down. So that was the main reason for the moderate assurance. The limited assurance report was around the Equalities Act and impact assessments. So this was an audit that was actually requested by the head of governance, who's here to answer any particular questions on that. So the good news there is that the council does have an equalities policy, but however, the framework does need strengthening to make sure that we do have consistency and transparency across the council. And that's been taken forward by the Equalities Working Group, who has an action group, which is headed up by Simon Hill. Moving on to the tracker, the numbers aren't coming down as quickly as I would like to see. So they've got a table on page 7. So a number of them have been delayed due to COVID-19, and I think that was right at the time, but as we're coming into the recovery phase, it's time for those to start moving on. So the ones that perhaps have been delayed are safeguarding, housing and repairs, playhouse, and corporate health and safety. We do have a larger amount of high recommendations than normal. Some of those is to do with the recently completed equalities audit that I've just talked about. 2 to do with former tenant arrears. So we're currently doing a follow-up audit to making sure that they are being implemented, and it's really encouraging at the moment that what we're looking at, that things have definitely moved on, so we'll be able to hopefully take those off. But obviously, being auditors, we need the evidence to back that. And the other one is to do with parks and landscapes and having a tree strategy, which is more of a longer term aim. Happy for questions.
Councillor Clark first.
It's a sort of question and a comment, really. I'm just focusing on the Equality Act as an example and the implications of equality. I agree with what you argue in an earlier comment that there's across the authority there's inconsistencies in looking at the implications for equality. And we haven't got a formal approach. And yes, it should be an integral part, so all that's fine. And you give it high priority, and yet when we come to the appendix, there's it's put something as a PS right at the very end, and just says that, well, it's in progress, and I just wondered where we are in relationship to this. And when you say next municipal year, they're meeting in next municipal year, do you mean the next, or I've forgotten what the wording is, but is it literally next municipal year, or is it the last one? And have they been meeting since the last one?
I think I'll bring
Simon
in
Hill.
Simon Hill to answer that question.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Clark. As Sarah alluded to at the beginning of her introduction, it was actually me that asked her to undertake the audit because I know that this group has discussed it before, and from other work that I've done in other places, it occurred to me that Harlow needed to embed some of its systems more fully. This work has actually been going on for quite a few months. Actually, I would think it's probably more than a year, with previous portfolio holder Francis Mason, and we were bringing forward a report just before she passed earlier in the year. So in terms of where we are, there is going to be a report made to the June Cabinet. It's scheduled for at the moment, which will bring together all of this work that we've been undertaking, looking at revisions to the policy, an action plan of which some of the work that Audit have kindly done for us this year forms part. So the action plan for equalities will be much wider, that will come before Cabinet, with a bid to do that, have a revised policy, and also try to embed members' thinking in taking decisions and officers in taking projects forward for those equalities assessments. So there's a whole range of work that will come back to the Cabinet in June.
Right, thank you.
Um,
Do we
I
know
will bring it up
roughly
to-
when?
What was that, Councillor Clark?
Do we know roughly when, or did I miss it?
It's coming to Cabinet in June.
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 Right, thank you.
Before I bring other people in here, I will, for a second, just remember Councillor Mason. This is an absolute passion of hers. You talked about it quickly in the report. I will bring in Councillor Perrin quickly after. You talked about a champion, a diversity champion. Would it be worth looking into a diversity champion amongst the councillors as well as something who can work alongside, as we do for IT and mental health? Would that be something, Simon, you'd be interested in looking into?
Well, I know that the portfolio holder, the new portfolio holder, Nancy Watson, and I have been working closely on this, and she's aware of the work that's been going on. So, I mean, if there was a champion, it's within her job description, if you see what I mean, as portfolio holder, to be the champion for the council.
Councillor Perrin. Oh, Simon,
Thank
do you
you,
want to
Chair.
come in first?
Oh.
Sorry, can I bring in Simon first, because just in case we want to talk on this point. You have your hand up, Simon.
Thanks, Chair. It was just really just to follow up on the point that Councillor Clark raised about the order of the appendix. Just to point out that Appendix B is actually sequenced in date order according to the date of the audit. So the fact that the equalities recommendations are at the end just reflects that it's the most recent audit that's been undertaken. So there was no intention to try and hide them anywhere at the end of the report. It literally was because of the date of the audit. So just for clarification, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Perrin.
Thank you, Chair. My questions relate to Appendix B, the audit tracker. On page 37, the complaints 2018-19 May 2019 recommendation reference 1 to implement a mechanism whereby actions from lessons learned questionnaire are followed up. This could be achieved by the senior management board receiving a follow-up action report. I noticed this even before COVID, this was on the slide, and we're saying that this hasn't been progressed any further due to COVID. I'm a little concerned because it doesn't appear to be any sort of sense of urgency around this particular item. And I suppose the lingering point, Chair, is, you know, if the council can't recognise where it's going wrong, how much damage is being done to the council's reputation through poor or damaging service to customers and the like, and tenants. So I suppose, you know, following that, you know, is there I think the committee really should push for this to be progressed, because there are questions flowing from this, such as, you know, the personnel that were due to be looking at this, who are they, and what work have they been taken away from, and what work are they now doing because of COVID, or indeed is this a sickness issue because they've been laid off because unfortunately they are suffering with the illness. So it's a little bit more detail, because there may be a legitimate reason here, but it seems that the pandemic is bandied around sometimes, and actually we can see this one was on the slide well before the pandemic hit. So I think really the committee chair should be asking for more detail on the slippage on this one, and I'm happy to open that one out. I have one more question on a different point. Chair, I don't know what your views are on that.
I'll quickly come in before I bring other people in. I mean, it's a slight misrepresentation of what it says on the tracker, Councillor Perrin. I mean, I think you're stretching the truth a little bit.
Chair, it was meant to be implemented in June.
Councillor Perrin, I will finish, and then I'll bring you back in if you have a comment.
Sure.
October 19, this has already been happening in a basic format. February 20, they want to report to come to a two-stage system. May, July, October coronavirus. So they were already doing this. So it's not like it wasn't happening already, and it's been asked for a two-stage system to come in. So
no, Chair, I understand where I think you've misunderstood what I'm getting at. I'm not looking at recommendation 2 there, which is the one you referred to about the two-stage complaint process. I'm not on about that at all. I'm on about
you're on about S&P in the first one on that page, where it says February 20, a report is still scheduled to go to SMB prior to the 31st. This will outline a request to move to a two-stage process and further work on a substantial mechanism learnt from complaints. So I'm looking at the right place. I'm just saying.
Oh, right, yeah.
You are slightly misrepresenting, saying that nothing was happening before. So I will pass over to Sarah Marsh, who probably can put a more succinct answer than me, but I'll pass over.
Oh, okay, I'd like to come back on that, Chair. Thank you very much, if I may.
Councillor Perry.
Well, just simply, it's very kind. I was looking for your support on this one, and I really wasn't trying to misrepresent anything that isn't written down here. I mean, that is pure interpretation. All I'm saying is that it was agreed to be implemented in June, and in October 19, whilst it was acknowledged that this was happening in a basic format, it's still not complete, and we are 2021 saying it's COVID. So all I'm saying is I think we need to dig a little bit deeper, just so we're not being told it's to do with COVID, and in fact we can see the real reasons why that is, because from June to October it still wasn't finished because it's been struck through several times. So I'm not trying to misrepresent the report. I would be misrepresenting it if indeed it wasn't on the tracker, but it is on the tracker because it's not been completed. So that's where I'm coming from. So I just wanted some further clarification on what work these people are doing, or indeed if these people are unfortunately ill, that's fair enough. You know, that would explain it to me. That's all it is. I just want a little bit more detail.
Councillor, sorry, yes, fine. Sarah Marsh.
Simon Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and address some of Councillor Perrin's concerns. I think in general, I think an observation of mine is that over the last year, complaint trends have been skewed quite considerably by COVID, in my opinion, because of the cessation of some services during lockdown. And you will have seen from the regular reporting in, as part of JFPR, there's been a trend in complaints generally that I think has been skewed by the fact that certainly some of our major service providers have had some of their services curtailed during that time. That's in general sense. I can assure members that SMB do receive monthly reports about where we are with complaints, what the trends are in them from our complaints officer. So that work is being seen by the management board on a regular basis, and we do question services and partners where we believe there are things that require them to look at them. Most recently, of memory of mine, we did look at the complaints that were stemming from HTS and how they were caused and how they got as far as they did. In terms of the two-stage process, I'm actually the person in the authority that looks at all of the complaints on Brian's behalf before Brian signs off on a stage 3 complaint. So I do see the ones that reach the top of the iceberg. Having had a discussion with the Chief Executive, we both feel that during this skewed time, it really isn't appropriate to go to a two-stage process, that there is still some more assurance at the top level that we need to do, but there is the intention of coming back to that at a later point. In terms of the staffing arrangements, obviously the Customer and Media Services Manager is one of the very few staff that has been in every single day running the contact centre and has been fully occupied. Just as a reminder to members, the contact centre has been taking most of the calls and the inquiries that would have otherwise gone to services in a normal case of affairs. So he has been very busy. We have addressed that in the last 2 or 3 months, and currently there is a recruitment exercise to place a customer services manager within his service by rejigging some of the resources to give him more of a headroom to do this type of work. So yes, hopefully I've addressed some of the queries that you might have there.
Thank you, Mr. Hill.
That
has answered my question. It wasn't an intent to misrepresent what's written down here. You've informed me that his team is being beefed up, and that reassures me that when this dies down, he's going to have the resources he needs to finish this piece of work off. So that's fantastic. My next question is to do with page 41 of Appendix B. To do with the report under conflicts of interest and gifts and hospitalities. And if we go across, it says status update February 21. The code of conduct has been reviewed and requires officers and member approval from the Constitution Working Group and Council, hopefully to be obtained by the end of March 2021. Which is reassuring. Just wondering, is this on the council's forward work plan? And again, that would give us a more concrete clue as to when it's actually going to be concluded.
I'll say over to Simon Hill, but yeah, Simon Hill.
In terms of that particular action, one of them, I think the main thrust of that was in relation to officers. So there has been a review of the code of conduct for officers. I think it is still fit for purpose in that way. I have also reviewed the PPP process and with Sarah put in the element that the audit wanted, that where we have an annual review with staff, that we have a discussion with staff about potential conflicts of interest that might have arisen during the year. So that element of it is done. In relation to the wider code of conduct, obviously that's a matter for this committee if it comes back. Members may or may not be aware that the Local Government Association have recently published a revision to the code of conduct for members. I have to say that it's received some mixed response across the country from authorities, and there is some work that's to be done on that. There is a proposal to try and seek an agreement across Essex authorities to try and have a level playing field across Essex and have the same code. Not sure whether that is going to be possible. Officers have it in the governance business plan for 21-22 to undertake a review of that LGA code of conduct for members, and it will come back to this committee and also potentially take the views of the Constitution Committee before it ends up at full council.
Thank you, Chair.
Any others, Councillor Perrin?
No, thank you.
Councillor Eddie Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's on a question from page 30 in Internal Audit's report. There's 3 paragraphs there, and Sarah actually touched on it, but I just need to be convinced. Without reading it through, it's really about the PCs that were purchased and couldn't be traced. So for me, it's how concerned should we be about items of ICT being acquired and not recorded properly going forward?
I don't think you need to be too concerned, because IT have they have been using this second spreadsheet to mark everything down. It just, they haven't quite crossed the T's and dot the I's, and they will be going out in the next month or so and checking that we have got all our PCs in line. Simon Freeman, did you want to answer?
Yeah, I think just to emphasise what Sarah's said, really, and in that there was quite a major exercise undertaken to ensure that people had all the equipment they needed at the beginning of the lockdown to be able to work remotely and from home. So there was a record kept. I think, as Sarah's alluded to, I think what we need to do is just make sure that the separate records are amalgamated into one fixed asset record. But I'm confident that we don't have missing items of equipment. It's just the way they've been recorded doesn't help with the audit process, and that's something we're looking to rectify by the end of the year as part of the normal annual stock take, if you like, of the IT infrastructure.
Chair.
Any more questions? Nope. Any comments about the report? So can I go to recommendation on page 30?
Agreed.
All those in favour of recommendation on page 30?
Agreed.
Thank you. Right, scroll back to the top. Okie dokie, on to committee work plan on 50 to 51 to be noted.
Noted.
Sarah, do you want to come in on it?
So the next meeting you'll get the work plan for 21-22, and I need to reinvigorate the training process again. I think it worked well and we can do those remotely. So if you've got any ideas of areas that you would like some training on or some information on, it's a little half an hour for you to help you with your roles. Just drop me a line or let the chair know and he can get back to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So is that noted?
Noted.
I think GDPR
Noted.
training, Sarah. I think everyone needs more GDPR training. Agenda item 10, references from other committees. There are none. Matters of urgent business, there is none. And that brings to a close audit and standards on the 3rd of the 3rd.
Thank you, Chair.